Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Ramadan Kareem. Thank you for being here today. My name is Namrata, and I'm the co-founder of Shiftyco. And welcome to the next Business Sustainability Talk. Shiftyco is a platform for honest, vetted, eco-friendly products. And while we're in the business of products, we realize we're truly in the business of behavior change. And behavior change does not happen without knowledge and awareness. And thus, we run this series called Business Sustainability Talks, engaging with sustainability leaders across different industries to build a platform where you can get access to information about how the best case practices, the challenges, the opportunities of incorporating ESG sustainability in different contexts. Today, we have with us Shireen Mistree, Head of ESG for VFS Global. I don't think I will do justice to your introduction, so I'll leave it to you to introduce yourself, Shireen.
Thank you so much, Namrata. It's a pleasure to be here on this platform. I think what you said in setting the tone for this discussion is very, very relevant. I echo your sentiment that, it is the business of behavior change. And I'm glad that I can add value to this conversation and to this platform. So yes, I have been heading ESG for VFS Global. I joined the organization a little over a year and a half ago. Though I am originally from Bombay, I used to work for the Tatas and the Tata Trusts. I think sustainability, as different aspects of sustainability, has something, which has always resonated with me. Even when I was a little person, a child, I realized that this is something that's always going to be important for me. And then I have been lucky to find opportunities in the kind of organizations that I have worked for, whether it's with a bank, whether it's with an organization like the Tatas, and now with VFS. I've always seen that this mandate has been given a lot of importance. So the fact that it's no longer an afterthought and it's always part of the main conversation and the story, I think is very exciting. And I look forward to being a part of this story in the future as well.
Great. No, that's amazing. I think from our side, I see the excitement and the connect with sustainability broadly that you have. For those who don't know, can you tell us a bit more about VFS Global? I know VFS Global really well because I'm at VFS Global every year for my visas, but for those who don't.
Sure. So we are the largest visa service provider in the world. We are located in almost 150 countries across the globe. We service about 67 governments. And the idea is to support them with anything that requires them to take a decision for them to grant a visa of any kind to an individual who's applying for it. We look at all the non-judgmental aspects of this decision-making process. Just to make life easy, both for the client governments that we service as well as for the customers.
Yeah, no, that's a great service, and for weaker passports like mine, it proves really handy. So going back to ESG, can you tell us more about the ESG landscape in the service industry, more specifically since VFS is in the service industry? What is the latest trends? What's happening in the ESG landscape in the service industry?
Sure. So I think I would say not just in the service industry, but even generally what we are picking up as a private sector organization is that there is more of a sense for companies to contribute to this entire dialogue on, looking after your planet, looking after your people,
Mm.
looking after the communities and the societies from which you draw your business, from which you make your profits. So I'm not saying that it didn't exist prior, but I think it's significantly amplified. It's significantly grown in the last few years.
Yeah.
And while earlier it was still something that, companies would like, it's a good to do. Now it's a combination of good to do and need to do
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
So you would see that in the kind of, reporting requirements
Yeah.
that we have. You would see that in also in terms of how it gives you an edge as a business.
Yeah.
And the reframing that we have done in the organization is, don't look at it as a compliance thing.
Yeah.
Start looking at it as something that gives you a competitive edge from
Yeah.
your peers in the market.
Yeah.
So that's a trend that I see significantly taking place in the sector.
So a lot of people argue that the older generation of leadership were trained by business schools to think of more the profit part of it, and they didn't think more of that the resources are finite. There's so much we can do. So they didn't look at things more long term. Now it seems the reframing where you're keeping the planet in mind is also the long term impact of business. So it's a kind of reframing of the way you look at business. So it's more than mandates. So how do you see this change in mindset in leadership coming across when they start thinking of ESG?
I think it's a no-brainer. And if you don't make this mind shift, you're not going to have a business that is profitable, that will, achieve your margins and your business goals. I think the turning point was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because everybody realized in whatever capacity that if you don't look after your people, if you don't look after the society and by an extension, the planet, who are you going to serve? Have this business for? It may not just exist in the next, few decades. So that kind of, turning point we see more and more of, leaders being cognizant of. You can't take it for granted. And even if there are leaders who focus on profits, they realize that if they don't look at these aspects, it's going to impact their profit margins as well. So you cannot be in a position to, just be like, let others do their own thing. I'm going to still continue focusing on profits. Because somewhere down the line, your bottom line will be impacted.
Yeah, it'll catch up. It has to be a holistic
Absolutely.
So now deep diving into VFS more specifically and looking more at what VFS is doing for ESG. Can you give us a background of your initiatives, what you all are doing, and what your objectives are?
Sure. So I think I would say for us as a business, see, we are not a publicly listed company. We are a private sector organization. The basic line of thinking that drives all our initiatives is earn profits, but also do right by people and the planet. And keeping that approach in mind, we came up with what is called our 5-pillar framework or 5-pillar strategy, which sort of caters to all these aspects. So you have to look after the planet, you have to protect the environment, you have to look after communities, you have to support causes, which will, help strengthen that demographic in the societies that you're operating. You have to make sure that there's elements of good governance within your organization. So how are decisions made? How many committees do you have? What are your reporting mechanisms? As employees, is it a good place to work? Do I feel coming to this organization? Does it foster a safe environment? So all these aspects are sort of covered within the 5-pillar framework. And one thing that has worked very well for us is we are not looking at making big, bold statements as much as we are looking at doing small but impactful actions. And I think that kind of steady delivery has always, kind of held us in good stead, whether it's the client governments that we service, the applicants who walk through our organization,
Right.
the employees who work for us, our investors, any of our key stakeholders have been, appreciative of this approach.
That's interesting. So you talked about these 5 pillars and you spoke a little bit about, so how long has VFS been, focusing on ESG, and how do you all report on it? How do you all manage it? Just so that anyone who's watching gets a sense of what you're doing.
Sure. So I think as a business, we've been in existence since 2001. And I know for a fact that there were a lot of things happening, in different parts of the world. But I think it kind of formalized more in 2021, 2022.
Right.
And where we also had a, dedicated team that was set up to deliver on this mandate of the organization. So, and since then, we've made sure that we publish what we call our integrated sustainability report, because that report is also a good demonstration of our efforts on the ESG front. We try to give a very fair, objective understanding of everything that's worked, what have been some of the challenges, and how we've managed to work around those challenges and still deliver on what is required on the ESG.
So can you tell us a little bit more about what's worked really well for VFS and what were some of the challenges that kind of came?
Sure. So I think what worked really well, and I would like to acknowledge the fact that, once we knew that we had to successfully demonstrate our ESG or sustainability performance, we had 100% backing from our leadership. And that kind of makes life very easy because you have the endorsement from the top. But what was also interesting, and I would like to give credit to all my colleagues in different teams in different geographies across the world, because they made it easy for me to implement the strategy, the mandate, initiatives. So it's wonderful to see, that if we have an idea, how it's translated based on what the local requirement is and how quickly it is implemented. So that for me has been very encouraging, and to see how well it has played out. So I would say that's been the good side. In terms of the challenge, I think is just generally sometimes, being part of the professional service industry. If you see some of the reporting requirements, or disclosures or guidelines, they don't always cater in the most straightforward way to how to report as a service provider. They cater perhaps more to like a manufacturing unit or an oil and gas company. But if we are in the professional services industry, then how do we kind of respond? So that's been something that we've had to work around, and there are several experts in the field who guided us through it. But still, I think if we had a framework which was more catered to this segment, I think it would be easier to report on our successes.
No, that's really interesting. So a lot of people wonder that in the service industry, Ms. Shanzala, so what all do you do for the specific E, S, and G? And I'm deep diving a little bit more in it because a lot of people question what does the service industry do for it, right? So if you can give some examples of what you do for these different elements at VFS, and then we can go into, best case practices and things like that.
Sure. So I think what has worked very well for us is the fact that first understand your business. Instead of trying to first understand what needs to be done from an external perspective, try to understand your business and within its sphere of influence, what is it that you can do? So now, if I have a business that's operating in almost 150 countries across the globe, I am sitting here in Dubai. what may work for me here in this region may not necessarily work in, other parts of the world.
Yeah.
So you need to have that kind of mindfulness, I would say.
Yeah.
Even in terms of the strategy that you put in place, the programs that you design. So I think that for us is something that we need to focus on. And generally, I think once that is taken care of, what we've realized is that even though we may not have as many emissions as oil and gas or a manufacturing company, we still do have emissions. I mean, we work in offices, we consume electricity. And what I always tell my colleagues and my peers is, you don't have to be PhDs, to find the perfect solution to reducing your impact on the environment. But little things like at our visa application centers, what kind of lights do you use? Do you switch off your devices? We use a lot of technology and technology devices. So how do you dispose them of? Do you dispose them of responsibly? Do you repurpose them? What is the temperature of your AC unit? So very little things. And what I tell them is you may not see the impact in like 10 days, but you will see it in a year. And so just focus on those small but impactful things. And I think that's what has worked very well for us. And just generally, keep in mind that what may work for one business, even if we are all part of the same segment or industry, but what may work for one business may not necessarily work for the other. So do something that works for you. And that's why the baseline of understanding what works for your business is very, very important.
No, I think that's a really interesting point, because a lot of times people look at the mandates and you're looking at checklists. And people miss this one basic step of taking a step back, seeing what's happening in the business, what are the opportunities that are there, and how things can be customized.
Yes, absolutely.
So now looking at the service industry, and you spoke a little bit about the challenges the service industry faces. So what is the landscape like in the service industry? What do you think? You've mentioned some of the challenges in reporting, but how is the adoption of ESG in the service industry, and what do you think the opportunities for businesses are?
So I am a firm believer in the fact that, when you adopt something like ESG or sustainability into your day-to-day business operations, you are undoubtedly going to get a competitive edge. So I would say that with that kind of reframing, and I'm seeing that amongst our peers as well, who constitute this segment, that, they are able to showcase a side of their business which is more relatable to even the future workforce. So for example, we've seen that, a demographic which, would constitute of Generation Z or, even after that, Generation I, they are looking to be part of companies that are focused on this mandate. So when we've adopted something like this, across the board, we've seen that, people feel like it's a good place to work, people want to join your organization, and generally, I think there is a good standing in the society or in the community when you've adopted this. And I've seen that with, as I said, my peers in the sector as well. It's helped.
It helps.
It helps.
So I think this is a very important point where you talk about it gives you a competitive edge. Now the issue with a lot of marketing and talking about sustainability and ESG initiatives is the big question of greenwashing as well. And this is quite prevalent. EU has now come up with laws to, contain the situation. But how can you avoid greenwashing? A lot of times we also find some people greenwashing without understanding the impact of it. So what can a service industry company look out for when they're communicating, and how can they avoid greenwashing?
Sure. So there are two parts to this. One, of course, is to strike a good balance between greenwashing and green hushing. So I've also recently discovered that, sometimes you say a lot of things which may not be true, which is greenwashing, but you also don't end up saying things, because you think that is it good enough, or I call it the imposter syndrome of, ESG, or are we doing enough? Oh, look, my peer has done all these 10 different things. What have I done? So I shouldn't report. So I think it's a question of balancing, greenwashing and green hushing, and always find that middle ground. And there are enough experts and more to help you find that middle ground. And the second part I would say is, yes, absolutely go all out to avoid greenwashing, because and this is our philosophy as well. Small but impactful. Yeah. And that's what you need to focus on. Big, loud statements which can't be backed with data, which can't be backed with documentation, which can't be backed with demonstration through initiatives and programs, can put you in a very vulnerable position. And once the consumer doesn't trust your brand, it's going to be very difficult to reverse, your reputation from, the bad to the good again. So I would say always err on the side of caution. And make sure that, and don't get caught in the trap that, if I don't make a big commitment or a big announcement, will I be considered as a strong company? Sometimes the best of the best companies are the ones that are silently but effectively working towards their ESG mandate. And we should all kind of stick to that.
That's really well put, Shireen. I really like that. I think bold, loud statements don't always, if there's no follow through, they're the worst thing you can do with your business.
Yes.
So now, when we look at ESG, how can we incorporate different principles of ESG across the value chain of the company, across the culture? What could be certain things that people can do to think of ESG in a broader way that can be incorporated in companies?
Sure. So, I have been actually giving this a lot of thought, even given my responsibilities for the organization that I work for. And one thing I realized that I can speak about technology, I can speak about innovation, but if I don't focus on capacity building within our workforce to even understand what does E, S, and G mean, I am not going to get the kind of outcome that I'm striving for within the organization. So I think awareness is a big aspect, of integrating ESG into the business. Sure, top management may be aware, some other colleagues of yours may be aware, but if you do not have the entire workforce, clear on what is the business doing from an environment perspective, what are they doing from a social perspective, and what are they doing from a governance perspective, it's going to be very difficult to rally them to a call to action. So I think that's one of the things that I'm really focusing on within the organization. Build capacity on different aspects and understanding the definition of ESG. It's not just environment. There is an S and a G as well. People tend to forget S and G. Sustainability means, oh, you must be doing something to recycle. You must be doing something, but it's so much more. So build capacity. And the second thing I think we're also focusing on is innovation, which is, what are the different ways that you could find solutions as a private sector organization to solve some of the world's most challenging problems. And again, in the larger scheme of things, when you say, oh, what is one organization going to, do in terms of solving the planet's problem? But trust me, it's one and then several others, which at some point it will catch up and show something positive. So I think innovation as well in terms of solutions to the problem.
I completely agree. And I think a lot of what you're saying is what we say at ShiftEco. Our tagline is small shifts, big impact.
Nice.
Because a lot of the customers are like, oh, if I change my consumption, how's that going to matter? It's just me.
Yeah.
But I think it's the multiplier effect. If I'm changing something, I'm going to tell my friends, I'm going to tell my colleagues, they're going to go ahead and tell other people. The ripple effect of one action has a lot of impact. And I think as companies, as individuals, we all need to kind of remember that. I want to focus a little bit on the S.
Yes.
Because I think it's, you're absolutely right. When people think sustainability, oh, it's about environment, it's about emissions.
Yes.
And a lot of people don't talk enough about the S and the G. So let's focus a bit on the S and the G.
Sure.
So what could be things that you do for focusing on the social aspect of ESG?
So social, I think for us as a business, we evaluate social from three perspectives. One, of course, is your employees.
Yeah.
Second, of course, is the people,
Yeah.
in the society in which you are making your, or rather generating your profits and business from.
Yeah.
And the third is, of course, even your supply chain.
Mm.
So how are you looking at your supply chain? Are you giving more opportunities to local businesses?
Yeah.
Are you giving more opportunities to women-led businesses?
Mm.
What does your workforce look like?
Mm.
Like, do you only see one kind of demographic in your workforce?
Mm.
Is there an opportunity to, have a diverse workforce? And
Mm.
diverse is not just gender. The
Yeah.
diverse is also, are there roles and responsibilities that could be taken on by people with determination, people with disabilities?
Yeah.
Can you grow your talent pool from just one type? All kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds. And I think we at least try to make an intentional effort, both from the way we hire as well as, how we retain that particular individual within the organization. And across all these elements, I would say one thing that, we are really focused on is the concept of respect and acceptability. Because within these social aspects, a lot of things can get neutralized if you demonstrate respect and acceptability. So you and I may come from very different parts of the world.
Yeah.
But I think as long as I have respect for your differences, your ideas, your opinions, and I may, accept them, I think, there is a lot to be achieved. And similarly, I would say the same for, the kind of causes that we want to support.
Right.
It's not just about, signing a check or making a donation.
Yeah.
Again, it works as a neutralizer, where we are not above to anybody else.
Yeah.
We are doing something that's contributing to the larger good.
Yeah.
And again, with the supply chain as well, we are opening ourselves to, again, not giving businesses just to one type, but to everybody. So within the social lens, I think neutralizing, our engagements with the elements and aspects of respect and acceptability, I think that approach has worked quite well. Yeah.
That's a really interesting approach. I think a lot of people can do. I think you're absolutely right. If there's respect and acceptability, there's a lot of coexistence of different cultures.
Yes.
And I think even in decision making, it's a lot of diverse opinions that can actually yield more innovative results, which leads to the first part that you spoke about, innovation. So I think that's a really critical part. So let's talk about the G. What all do you all do in the G? I assume G is really big for you all.
Very big.
Yeah.
Very big. G is very big because, as I mentioned in the beginning, we service a whole host of, governments across the globe. But more than that, I think just having a sense of responsibility to doing it right.
Yeah.
And that's where governance plays a very important role.
Yeah.
It sort of is the guardrail in your organization to make sure that a decision is not being taken in a flippant manner, in an ad hoc manner. There is a thought behind why something is being done.
Yeah.
And if there is an area of discomfort, if there is an area of concern, how do you kind of address that? So
Right.
governance takes care of that aspect as
So like a
well.
compliance
Yes,
set of
compliance processes, systems in
Yeah.
place. Just kind of making me as an employee also feel like, okay, this is an organization that will do right by me.
Yeah.
Will do right by other stakeholders.
Yeah.
In the delivery of the service
Yeah.
that we provide. And I think what governance also kind of establishes is a sense of trust.
Yeah.
And trust is such a driving force, it's not just your profit margins that will make a potential investor, invest in you. That element of trust combined with your profit margins will also make the investor invest in you. So I think that's what governance does. And if you have good governance in place, trust is just easy to follow.
Yeah. So what would be the best case practices for governance? Are there any examples you can share so it can be more solidified?
So I just look at it from the perspective of, what kind of boards do you have?
Yeah.
Are there strong boards in terms of, the people who are, enlisted to that board? What kind of committees do you have in place? How frequently do those committees meet? How are decisions taken within those committees?
Yeah.
And what's the follow through on those decisions?
Right.
If things go wrong for a business, how is accountability, tracked and measured? Is it swept under the carpet, or is it like taken head on? So those are the kind of things, in terms of best practices, that work very well for the organization.
Right.
Even from an ESG perspective, it's not me here sitting, trying to do programs and initiatives without having the buy-in of, all our stakeholders.
Yes.
I do report into, a member of the executive board, who further reports into the other members of the executive board and the larger board of directors. So nothing is done on a whim or an ad hoc basis.
Yes.
And I think, again, I come by the rule that simple but effective. So you don't need 100 processes, 100 systems. You need few but impactful processes.
And I think that's a really important point, because I see a lot of companies where their processes are so cumbersome, so difficult to follow through, that people actually just get lost in the process.
Yes. Yes.
Which is a bit of a catch for most.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely. So I always say, like, when you open a report, don't look at number of processes as much as what has been the impact of those processes in place. I think that's kind of, what gives you a sense of, is something really working or not working? Because I could have like 100 processes, but if it's not delivering a positive outcome for the company, for our stakeholders, then what's the point?
Right. So, I mean, ESG is different in different industries. So what do you think the service industry could do better moving forward? And what could be the learnings from ESG compliance and the way it's been run in other industries that could be adopted as well?
I think we need more commentary and knowledge on, what exactly should the service industry be reporting on. I think sometimes we have a tendency to just settle. And at least in the opportunities and platforms that I get, I try to bring in that perspective. Because I'm just trying to think, from a future perspective. If I look back and I'll see that, oh gosh, I reported something which was completely irrelevant to my business and my industry. Why? Then what purpose did it serve? So I think that's something that we need to, really come together a little bit more on. And even sort of let the stakeholders in this business know that if y'all are putting out guidelines and reporting requirements
Mm.
cater to all kinds of
Right.
industries, not just the heavy few,
Yeah.
which may be high on their impact on the
Mm.
environment, among others. And the second thing I think for us as an industry also is just to, make sure that we don't get consumed with jargon.
Mm.
Because sometimes I see in the literature that comes out, I'm like, what is all this? Like the taxonomy, and I'm like, there are different words, and in some part of the world it's understood differently.
Yeah.
Here it's understood differently. Can we like standardize,
Yeah.
the taxonomy around ESG, please?
Yeah. Fair enough.
And that's something that I would continue to rally for.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And what do you think other industries are doing? Are there any other best case practices in other industries that you could share?
I think in terms of other industries, I like the fact that now they are focusing on the supply chain.
Mm.
So first, I think as all organizations, the focus was inwards,
Yeah.
like get your house in order, make sure that all the different pieces of, governance, social, environment are taken care of.
Mm.
But within social now, the fact that there is a focus externally as well, and holding your supply chain accountable.
Mm.
I think that's very, very interesting to see, and I see that in some other industries,
Yeah.
being beautifully
Yeah.
driven.
Yeah.
And again, some businesses whose approach I align with a lot is first understand the baseline of
Yeah.
your supply chain.
Yeah.
Just because you have to evaluate your supply chain doesn't mean that you just wake up one morning and go for it. Again, evaluate, take a sample size, see what's working, see what's not working. Not all your suppliers, maybe those big companies who can easily report on ESG. Some are very small vendors,
Yeah.
and you're expecting them to submit an integrated report.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
so just, and there are without naming names, companies who've done that beautifully.
Yeah.
In the other industries that I read about.
Nice, interesting. I like the format that you put, like when you're starting ESG, look at baseline.
Always.
Yeah, that's the first
Yes.
step. So, how can companies leverage ESG? I know you talked a little bit about trust, you talked a little bit about reputation.
Yes.
But I find that most ESG leaders have to make a business case of ESG to get buy-in, because buy-in is so important. You're dealing with so many different aspects of the business. So what would be that buy-in in addition to the 2 points? Because it's hard to get different people. Everyone has their own agenda
Sure.
on the table.
Sure.
So how can companies look at getting a competitive edge with ESG?
So I think, see, I genuinely believe as a company or a business, your core motive is to make profits.
Yeah.
So you're not trying to say that it's either or.
Yeah.
And what you have to do as an ESG person within the organization is to give that clarity.
Yeah.
That we are not saying that, stop making your profits, don't expand your businesses and scale in different geographies. Do all those things, but with a sense of social responsibility.
Yeah.
Because that combination gives you trust, gives you confidence, but it also gives you longevity.
Yes.
Which, like I was just reading this case study where they were trying to tell us, like ask us to assess as ESG leaders, what's going to happen to your business, let's say, if, there's a massive tsunami or a massive natural calamity, is your business resilient enough to withstand any kind of calamity that comes its way? And it got me thinking that, what is it that we can communicate as ESG leaders to management, to other colleagues, other peers, within the industry as well as outside, as to why integrate this. So, so somehow everybody has this impression that if you integrate ESG, you have to forget making profits. It doesn't work that way. You have to integrate ESG because it will ensure that your longevity, and your profits will keep coming because of it. So I think that kind of,
Yeah.
thought,
Yeah.
longevity has to stick with us.
Yeah.
Because if your business will cripple with one, global calamity,
Yeah.
then what profits were you focusing
Yeah.
on?
And I think Corona was a perfect example of it, right? It showed businesses that don't have resilience. They basically go bankrupt, and that's what it is.
Yeah.
And I really like what you said, because I find that a lot of people assume that if you're a social enterprise, why are you for profit? And they think by you being for profit, that's taking away from your social aspect. But a business needs to generate money to sustain.
Yes, absolutely.
And that is the core of it. But everything else is providing that there's longevity in the business, and it's a robust business, holistic, and not just taking into account only profit.
Absolutely.
And that's a real it's a mindset shift for senior leaders, because people view it very differently.
Yes. But don't stop. I'm not saying become a revolutionary.
Yeah.
But take the help of people,
Yeah.
who can empower you with knowledge on making a case to your management.
Yeah.
That it's not either or.
Yeah.
It's both.
Yeah.
And for the long term.
Yeah.
So as long as you manage to make that case,
Yeah.
your business will thrive.
Yeah. So I know you answered it in bits, but if for the audience, if there's anyone who's looking at starting ESG, could you walk them through what you would recommend? I know baseline is first.
Yes.
But what could be other recommendations for anyone starting the process? Because, with the focus on sustainability and ESG more broadly, you find a lot of companies now trying to start the journey. And it's actually quite daunting, because there's a lot of information out there and people struggle with figuring what to do first. So if you have, any recommendations for someone starting.
Sure. So one, of course, is know your business, what works for your business, and also the practicality of integrating ESG for your business. So do not fall into the trap of what's working for 10 other people, 10 other organizations is necessarily going to work for you. So learn, take the help of people who are seasoned professionals. Talk to your peers. I have learned along the way, especially in this region, just by talking to other people as well, to understand what works, what will not work. Don't again chase those big, lofty goals, commitments, because accountability is very, very important. And if you make that statement and you can't hold yourself accountable to what you have said a year down the line, then that's a completely, non-starter. So I would say baseline practicality, learn from your peers. There are enough and more organizations that are doing some excellent work. Do not reinvent the wheel. You will be able to, extract best practices from different organizations and, customize it to what would work for you. Be mindful of the fact that, every organization is at different stages in their ESG journey. The thing that we do, and I think that's human nature, we sometimes only report on everything that's going good. We don't necessarily report on everything that's also gone bad. And that's okay. But in your offline conversations, try to understand so that you can learn from, those mistakes and not do the same for your organization. So I think just having that sense of, belief that, you're a learner, not everything will go, right for you, but a lot of things will go right for you. So how can you, make sure that you curate and customize something that works for your organization and not what, is being, talked about by the masses and stuff like that.
The trending.
The trending.
Yeah, that's the biggest one.
Trending. Yes.
Yeah. So we've come to the last part where we always like to open up the floor to all of you who are watching to see if there are any questions about what we've covered. We've shared some of the amazing insights that Shireen has. But the idea of this platform is also to give you the opportunity to ask questions. So if there are any questions, please feel free. And typically we get a lot of emailed questions too, so
Sure.
there will be a lot. We'll wait for 2 minutes and then we'll wrap up if there are no questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. And do send those questions.
Yeah,
if ever.
absolutely, absolutely.
Lovely.
I think I don't know. I've really enjoyed the session today. It's been
Okay, so we have one question. Do you have predictions about ESG trends in the next few years?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I was going to ask that and I forgot. So that's a good one.
Yes, absolutely. I think the trend, of course, is going to be, focusing on building resilience within the organization, and what is the organization doing to build that resilience. So, for example, we are already working very closely with our finance team because cash flows, cash reserves, and how can ESG ensure that, that aspect of the business is also looked at. Supply chain, of course, is very, very important because the extension of your business is your supply chain.
Yeah.
And you cannot be saying that, I'm doing everything by the book, but the person who's providing the service to me is, doing something which is wrong for the planet. That won't work well. That won't work well for your future workforce that would want to potentially join you. And I think the third trend that I see is, a lot of people are going to hold you accountable.
Yeah.
So you cannot, as a business, just make a statement and expect that you will not be held accountable.
Yeah.
So steer away again, as I said, from big,
Bold.
bold statements. Small and impactful will always see you through.
Nice. Great. I really like the small and impactful part. Any other questions?
There is this question which says the service industry is very people intensive. How do you ensure that cultural sustainability trickles down in the organization?
So I would again start off with building awareness because we need to demystify sustainability,
Yeah.
ESG.
Yeah.
I often get told sometimes, that, do you recycle paper? And I'm like, okay, it's not just about recycling paper. It's a whole host of things. And I have seen that once they understand, then, for them to buy what you are saying, what you would want them to do, at whatever level that you are interacting with them becomes very, very easy. So I would say just, building awareness. Because once you are informed and aware, it's easy for you to, bring them over to your side.
But I have an issue with this awareness part. While I think it's so important, I find that for companies, it's nice to have. Like when we speak to companies, a lot of them are like, who does this awareness sit with? Does it sit with HR? Does it sit with the sustainability heads? Who's leading it? And there are no budgets for it. And for employees, are they really going to take out 2 hours or 3 hours from their time to attend these sessions? There's a lot of backlash because there is no governance around it yet.
Yes.
These are not mandated sessions. So how do you overcome that as an organization?
So I just see it as any other problem.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to stop doing something because I'm going to get pushed back on it.
Yeah.
Especially if I feel, that in the long run, it's going to do a lot of good for the organization. So just like any other problem, I feel that, the journey to convert somebody's thinking takes time. Like change is something that you can't get in 15 minutes. Okay, it has to be consistent and it has to be persistent. So I'm not saying you have to be like a nagging person, trying to just say that get it done, use threats and intimidation. No, but be persistent, be consistent,
Nice.
and you will have the converts. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
There's another question. What are some of the frameworks you recommend for the service industry that they could look into and, follow?
So from a frameworks perspective, I would say for us, what's worked is, the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative Framework, the SASB framework. These are good, simple, frameworks that have been existent for quite some time. And I feel like at least I have been able to report effectively, using those frameworks. We also comply with United Nations Global Compact principles. So they have a list of principles, and sometimes it's just a good sort of lens to see that any kind of strategy, program, initiative that you're designing, is it aligning with those principles? I think that becomes very important.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. Any other questions? Okay, great. Any closing remarks, Shireen?
I would just like to say thank you to both of you, Namrata and Sukriti. I think these kind of discussions are highly encouraged. Like I said, I'm a learner. I love, platforms which bring together different perspectives. I'm pretty sure just, given the series of questions, it's giving me a lot of things to think about as well, which would help our business in the long term. And I would encourage you to keep doing more of these. But thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
No, thanks a lot, Shireen. I thoroughly enjoyed the session, and I'm sure everyone that attended enjoyed too. These discussions are genuinely very important. Each time I conduct any of these sessions, I feel like I learned something new. So it also has this selfish angle to it that I really enjoy running these sessions. So for all of you who attended, thank you so much for attending. For those who could not, we're going to have a recording up for this session next week. Business Sustainability Talks is an ongoing initiative. We have another one that will be launched next month. So please stay tuned, follow us on LinkedIn, and keep yourself updated on our next events. We look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thank you so much for joining.